Jovan Buha, who covers the Los Angeles Lakers for The Athletic. Also, you can find Jovan with some great content on YouTube as well. Buha's Block does a fantastic job on there. Lakers, NBA, whatever you need, he's got you covered. Jovan, what's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's start with this. We're about now 28 and a half hours into free agency. I don't know why I'm counting them like that, but about 28 and a half hours into free agency. Are you surprised that we're sitting here right now and there has been no movement from the Lakers? And I know that it can be a number of different circumstances, but surprised or no, this is kind of free agency. We'll take a little bit of time for the Lakers. Just your thoughts here as we're just kind of closing down a little bit further than day one of free agency.
I would say slightly surprised. I do think that Rob Pelinka tempered trade expectations a little bit earlier in the week. First at the JJ Redick press conference and then at the Dalton Connect press conference. However, I think that the activity around the league has painted a bit of a different picture in terms of how active teams like OKC and Minnesota and Denver and the Pelicans and that's to say nothing of teams in the East. So there's been multiple teams with playoff aspirations that have tried to position themselves to go for a championship, and I think the Lakers it would put themselves in that camp of teams that are trying to go for it, but that has not yet been reflected by the moves they've made. I will say I was a fan of the Max Christie move. I think it was a fair deal for both sides, and frankly, I think a contract that's going to age well, especially if Max Christie is given a permanent spot in the rotation next season as he's supposed to be. But that aside, obviously the Lakers can't stand pat. They are not a inner circle championship contender with this roster. I think they could win a round or maybe even a couple of rounds if there's some injuries or the bracket breaks in their favor or whatnot. But for them to come out of the West and have a chance to win an actual championship, they clearly need to upgrade the roster. Now, what upgrade that is, Klay Thompson, I think people think of Klay Thompson more from 2015 to 2019, and he wasn't that guy anymore. But I think he would have helped for sure, especially if it only cost them the non-taxpayer MLE. Now, they probably would have had to send out some outgoing salaries, so that would have complicated things. But I'm not really sure right now. DeMar DeRozan is the name that's been popping up since yesterday, and I'm not as sold on that fit as some people might be. But even then, I think they need. It's a little tricky.
Jovan Buha taking some time to join us here on Lakers Talk, Lakers free agency, obviously right in the heart of it. You mentioned Klay Thompson, and it's interesting because I think to me it's more the Lakers obviously went for him and they weren't able to get him, and Klay chose the Dallas Mavericks over the Los Angeles Lakers. There were some other names that were mentioned. Jonas Valanciunas, okay, he ends up with the Washington Wizards. I know you just mentioned DeMar DeRozan's name. I guess maybe the perception of the Lakers. Is there a perception right now on the Lakers that, okay, I'm not sure how good this team is going to be. It's a first-year head coach. Bron is going to turn 40 by the time, January 2025 rolls around, and don't get me wrong, LeBron is still special at this age. Is there a perception, you think, around the league, or you think these players are just finding different circumstances that they feel is better for them individually?
I think it's really a case-by-case basis. I don't think we can look past the fact that some people have been able to use the Lakers for leverage. I particularly look at the coaching ranks of, at the beginning of the coaching search, there was a little bit of buzz about could they, make a big offer for Jason Kidd or could they make a big offer for Ty Lue? And both of those guys got contract extensions.
Right.
And Kidd was probably going to, both were probably going to get it anyway, but I think from a timing perspective, there was more urgency from the Mavericks and the Clippers, respectively. Then you look at Dan Hurley and him using the Lakers for leverage to some extent. So, I think people have benefited also from being attached to the Lakers, and that's just kind of how this goes. But if we are objectively looking at it from Klay Thompson's perspective, the Dallas Mavericks are closer to contending for a championship than the Los Angeles Lakers are. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. So, and honestly, you could even say like the Lakers currently have more weapons with guys like Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell as like third and fourth options compared to Dallas, where there's a clearer hierarchy and probably a bigger gap there. I mean, I guess you could say PJ Washington maybe as like that third guy, but losing Derrick Jones Jr., like they don't have as many offensive weapons at the top of the roster the way that the Lakers do. So I think he's also probably in line to potentially have a bigger offensive role in Dallas compared to the Lakers. So I don't want I think that you're onto something there. Like that there is certainly the Lakers aren't viewed as the way they were viewed maybe, a decade ago, kind of before that lull that they had, or even as recently as a couple years ago. But I still think each situation is circumstantial. It's based on that individual. And I'm sure for some people they've benefited from throwing out, the Lakers are interested in me. And then all of a sudden that creates some urgency. So I think it kind of goes both ways, but for sure the Lakers have taken, I think, some sort of perception hit. At this point, until we see what actually happens, it's tough to say it's like some type of big hit where no one wants to go there.
Jovan Buha taking the time to join us here on Lakers Talk. Of course, covers the Lakers for The Athletic. You can also check him out. Buha's Block on YouTube. Does a fantastic job there as well. Jovan, what do you expect? I mean, what do you expect is next for the Lakers? I think what you said about looking at other teams being active, it feels like the Lakers have to do something. How do you expect these next few days to go? And I think maybe specifically here we are still hearing D'Lo's name coming up anytime there's some type of trade chatter. Is D'Lo? Can you start next season with D'Lo still on your team? I guess looking at the rest of the week for the Lakers and just your thoughts on the D'Lo stuff.
I don't think you can if you're seriously trying to win a championship. I think there's really no way to spin that. And it's not even a criticism necessarily of D'Lo. I think it's more so a criticism of the Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell pairing. And I think, there was a reason why they had to be split up at one point last season. And while I disagreed with the player that went to the bench, and I know several people with the Lakers disagreed as well, I think there's just a limitation there where both guys have very similar strengths and similar weaknesses. Now, the Lakers value Austin Reeves more because he's younger, he's a better defender, he's played better and performed better in the playoffs when you look at the last couple of postseasons, and he's also on a team-friendly multi-year contract, so he's cost-controlled. So from all those factors, there's a reason why Austin's been the guy that Lakers are we're not including him unless it's a bona fide top-tier all-star level guy. So I think just, by using logic, D'Angelo Russell is the guy that they would likely have to move and have been trying to move. And that was one of the first things that I reported once D'Angelo Russell opted in was, that the Lakers are going to try to, that they're going to be active in engaging in conversations and trying to be aggressive in moving him in a way that they weren't able to do at the 2024 trade deadline. So I would suspect one of two things happens. Either DeMar DeRozan ends up being a Laker, and that could be in the form of a sign and trade or him signing just for the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, or they make a separate move, and that likely would include D'Angelo Russell or potentially some draft compensation depending on who the player is that they're acquiring. So, I know the Lakers have been active. They're not just sitting there doing nothing.
Sure.
They are trying to execute trades, and I think just because something has happened doesn't mean that something isn't going to happen. But it's obviously not been a great look, the lack of activity, and them not being able to close with Klay Thompson, especially considering his dad is, covers he's broadcaster for the team and Laker great and won a couple titles. Klay's from LA, grew up in Orange County. So there's a lot of ties there, a lot of appeal, but ultimately it didn't happen. And now DeMar DeRozan is one of the names they're pivoting towards. But I have some legitimate concerns with that fit, to be quite frank. He's not a plus shooter and he's not a plus defender. And when you just think about that fit of teams don't necessarily have to respect him at the 3-point line, teams can cheat off of him. And defensively, he's probably going to be your starting small forward. So I think your perimeter defense is going to have a certain limitation there. So I personally don't love the DeRozan fit. From a value perspective, sure, he's worth the non-taxpayer or even more. And I get it in a vacuum. But from what you need around LeBron and AD, you need guys who can shoot, guys who can play off the ball, guys who can defend, and DeMar DeRozan doesn't check any of those boxes. So I do have some concern with the potential DeRozan fit.
Yeah, back to Klay Thompson's ties here in L.A. and Michael Thompson. I 100% blame it on his father. I 100% blame this on Michael Thompson. And even though him and I have done the pregame show for years now, I blame it exclusively on Michael. He couldn't sell his son. You can't sell your son on the Lakers. Jovan, it's I think that, by the way, your DeRozan observation, I think there are a lot of people that are questioning, hey, is that a great fit? Is it not a good fit? This is DeMar DeRozan's 34, which is not, that's not old, right? But I feel like DeMar's name has been coming up for the last 3-4 years around the Lakers. It's going to be a different player than you thought in the past. I mean, at this point, if the Lakers end up with DeMar DeRozan, I'll take my chances. But of what's played out so far, what is kind of a best-case scenario moving forward? Because you did say that the front office is obviously active. They're trying to make things happen. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we're in a results-driven business. It's great that you're trying, but are you going to make it happen or are you not? Is there a scenario that plays out that you walk away saying, you know what looked like a pretty awful free agency to start, when the dust settled, this happened and I feel comfortable with it?
Yeah, well, so one thing with the DeRozan fit is I would be much more open to it if he's willing to come off the bench. And I think if there was a way to stack, because to be honest, and this is a name that's going to trigger a lot of Laker fans, but I see some Russ similarities with DeRozan in terms of just like, yes, he's a star. Yes, he has a certain level of production. He's a certain level of scorer. But when you actually look at the basketball fit, DeMar DeRozan, like if we want to consider him a star, which I even think he's a borderline star at this point of his career, but if we want to just put him in that category among perimeter players that we're looking at their shooting, DeRozan's at the bottom of the list. And Westbrook is no longer a star, so I wouldn't even include him in there. But like DeRozan is, however many players you consider a perimeter star, DeRozan is near or at the bottom of that list in terms of shooting. So like all the other names that have been linked to the Lakers, like a Trae Young or a DeJounte Murray or a Donovan Mitchell, like all those guys are substantially better shooters and better fits off the ball. Now, they come with different complications. DeJounte is obviously in New Orleans now. Trae Young is one of the worst defenders in the league. So, like, they would come with their own warts potentially. But, like, I just think the Lakers have not valued shooting enough over the last few years, and I think I do have some concerns about that. But if he comes off the bench and you can stagger and you could have him run the second unit, maybe close games depending on the matchup, but like I would like that more. I just don't know if he's at that phase of his career to accept a smaller role. So I say all that to say I think a potential realistic name that I think would be a great fit would be Jeremy Grant. Now Portland is going to want both first round picks in that potential trade, but from a salary perspective, he's making about $27, almost $28 million. So you could get there with something like D'Lo plus a Gabe Vincent, or maybe a Rui plus a Gabe Vincent, and then maybe you throw in a minimum contract to match it. Maybe you even expand it with a Rob Williams, who I think his perception has taken a bit of a hit because of his injuries. But I think if we're thinking of the type of big that is done well next to Anthony Davis, it is a Rob Williams type, and maybe he is a buy low candidate. And if he can stay healthy for even a season or two, like that is a solid value contract. So I think some type of trade with Portland or Brooklyn. Brooklyn's been the other team that has been linked to the Lakers. They have Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, a couple of 3-and-D type wings. And if the Lakers could do something with them, I think that's also a nice way to, close out the off season. So some type of trade for a wing. Maybe you can do a consolidation trade, a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1, open up a roster spot, and then sign a defensive-minded big, potentially with, I guess most likely a veteran minimum contract. I don't want to nerd out with all the cap stuff, but like find a way to add another big, add a wing or two, and I think this roster starts to make a lot more sense. But look, the Lakers are going to have, I think, some type of hole, whether it's at point guard because you're trading D'Lo, or on the wing, or at backup center. And it's tough to fill all those holes, but if they can fill at least a couple of them entering the season, I think they're in at least better shape than they are currently.
Jovan, great stuff, buddy. Appreciate you hanging out here for a few minutes. I know it's a busy time of the year, but thank you for doing this.
Appreciate you.
All right, that's Jovan Buha right there of The Athletic. We come back.